That's a.
Well, I mean, it's not
Go
bad,
through the
it's like a
office too,
cold.
or?
No, well, I don't know about the office. I babysat my Friday, not this past Friday, Friday before. And, he was just running a fever, had a little diarrhea.
That goes green.
I say there's been a snow.
Then his
I
his
don't.
sister went from school the same day, and she was running a fever.
Yeah, I mean, I just figured it was a
And
done
then
deal.
I
Yeah.
started getting like postnasal drip Sunday. Went to work Monday, my husband went to work, he felt terrible. Tuesday, he goes and gets tested COVID. I'm like, oops, I went and got tested COVID.
Ah, great. Like,
They have no idea who we are or what we do,
I sleep really good when I have it.
and that's where I'm gonna go with it.
vitamins
I'm
and drugs
like,
and all
the
that. Yeah.
best sleep I've had in 20 years is when I have had it.
Okay, oh, you're back, Phil? Okay. Good morning to everybody. And our big crowd this morning, thank you for that on this miserable, wet Monday morning. So if we could, we'll get started here. We'll call the meeting to order. And if we could, we'll stand for our invocation and our Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Lord, I thank you for this day. I thank you for this time together and all the people here. I thank you for this town. I pray that you would bless us all. Help us in our decisions and guide us in every step of the way. Keep us safe. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this is our first public comment period. You have 3 minutes. Anybody who wishes to speak? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion.
We have a motion,
Second.
and we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the December 11th, 2023 meeting?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Very good. All righty, so we can jump right into our new business. Philip, if you would, please.
Thank you and good morning. Just briefly, I have a 10 o'clock meeting, so I apologize if I have to dip out. Brandon will usher you through any remaining items. But it's actually a Fayette County Development Authority associated meeting, so bouncing around. But the first item before you is approval of First Friday series for this 2024 season. We'll be kickstarting this in May, and the events committee, along with town staff, met to discuss potential lineup of items. So we do, as it happens every year, our First Friday season is split by fiscal year. So I've kind of broken some budget numbers out by fiscal year. And I do have the budget today to actually dive a little bit deeper into numbers. But for May and June, that's fiscal year, this current fiscal year is where those dollars will be coming from. The band for May 3rd is 6 Feet Back, and the theme will be Kids Night. On June 7th, the band will be Double Granite. The cost for both of these events will be the same, at least the projected cost will be the same. The band costs and the stage rentals are all the same for these events. So the total cost that we're anticipating for May and June is $4,730. The budget remaining for 23-24 fiscal year is $8,345. So we'll have a $3,615 surplus for this fiscal year. That being said, that's just for the line items, that surplus is taken just for the line items associated with events. Those line items are special program services, rental of equipment and vehicles, and then special program supplies. We actually are currently running a larger surplus than that. This is our second year running, so we've been projecting some potential costs and different associated items that we've not quite met yet. So we do actually have a budget surplus in legal services of $3,672 as well. We have a budget surplus in advertising of $1,000, printing and binding of $1,000. And then we also have office supply surplus of $357. And then, let's see. And then we also have our contingencies line item, which is essentially our pool of money that we're not using is $24,000. So we do actually have a lot more flexibility than the 3,615. That's just for the line items that are associated with events. So I just kind of wanted to point that out, paint kind of a broader picture for you as we go through. With the biggest line item surplus being in legal services. We didn't know exactly what to anticipate there. We budgeted for 5,000, and it looks like this year we'll probably only spend about 2. So that's where we're at.
But we would anticipate with the contracts and the building on the, with the firehouse, that we're going to incur higher, more legal services, obviously.
That's correct. Those legal services, we will likely be supported by the 100,000 that we have dedicated to that building. So we'll probably keep that, associated with building associated legal services and then typical legal services. So that money can come from that if you choose to spend it from that 100,000. Or we can keep it under, our, for just general fund, so to speak. So that's where we're at with this fiscal year and those 2 events. Before I go any further, do we have any thoughts or questions about that?
Question,
Is there?
do we know attendance-wise, more or less, what months brought in the most and most people? And also, what genre of music?
Yeah, I can let Linda and Christy maybe speak to that if they have any thoughts, but we don't do formal attendance, counts.
right.
We kind of do some guesstimates, and, the events have ranged from probably 300 to, I think we did have an event with about 1,100, 1,200 people. So, I'm not sure what causes extra attendance, if it's the band, the entertainment itself, or if it's perhaps the day, the conditions of the day, things like whether we're competing with other events that weekend or what have you. So I don't know if Linda, Christy, if y'all have any thoughts on that.
Mm-hmm.
Drew a crowd, and he's a homeboy that's made good.
Yep.
Also, I'm so sorry, do you want me to just come down front?
If you want to use
Okay.
this, you can.
Thank you. Hunter Callahan drew a huge crowd, he's a homeboy. Last year, we have had good success with Motown. This year, we're going to go forward with that, another Motown band. So it seems that we also have Second Time Around this year, who is listed as 6 feet back. They renamed themselves. And they will draw a big crowd because they used to play at Chip's Place all the time and everybody knows them. So it seems we draw a bigger crowd when people know these people and they've seen them before. And we've tried very hard to incorporate that into this year.
Can you say that in any kind of propaganda that who they were before?
Who do we have them last year?
No, who they were before. Can they do that? Also
The
known,
band,
also known as.
Oh, yes,
Formerly known
they were
as-
known as Second Time Around, and they're also known as
I
6
knew
feet.
that name, but I didn't know that.
Can you promote
the
it
new
that
name.
way?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, they're 6 feet back.
It's huge.
Oh, can we also include Second Time Around? I'll have to ask them if that's acceptable. If it is, we will.
Okay, cool.
From a personal point, I think we have to, with the cost that's involved with it, and I know Philip has just given us a financial report. Maybe I'm just a little too ultra-conservative, but I think with the building, hopefully pushing that along, meaning the firehouse, will we need that extra money to maybe not have the First Friday events this year, at least anyway, until maybe we get the stage built? Because from what I see, and obviously I'm there, we're not pulling a lot of people there every time. And we get a decent crowd, don't get me wrong, but it's the same people. I mean, originally, when we had the First Fridays, it was for the purpose of promoting the DDA, or the Downtown Development Authority. Now, we've been doing this, what, 2 years already? This would be our third year?
Yes, sir.
I mean, people still don't really know who the DDA is, and it's not their fault. I think the building, you know, the firehouse, once that starts, that will certainly help with our thing. I think it's something to consider, that maybe we, you know, save that $8,000 for, you know, for something else. That's just my personal opinion. I don't know how anybody else might think about that, but it's up to the council how they want to do it. Anybody else have any thoughts?
How many First Fridays will there be this season?
There are 5, and there were 5 the previous 2 years. And it's a very nominal fee. We have worked very hard. None of these bands require that big stage that's $1,800. We can use our stage that we own. Really, your only expenditure is a sound man and the band, and a couple of $100 each event to do little things for the children. And we've had very good response. The first year was pretty good. The second year was good. We expect this year to be better.
I do know that weather has played a factor in
In 2 of them, yes, ma'am.
in the attendances at some of them. But I also have seen a lot of comments on Facebook, you know, when's the next one, or what's happening, or people look forward to something like that. And I've been very personally impressed with the number of people that have come out to the ones that I either attended or drove by and saw the people. So it's kind of hard to say, do we not support, because I think it's not just about the DDA. I think it's about bringing the community together. And anytime you can get people to come out of their homes and gather is a good thing.
It's a plus for the
And we have
town.
a beautiful park, so especially when the weather's good, it's really nice to get out and fellowship, so.
What do the vendors say? Are
They love it.
they're okay?
They
with
love it. I'm already getting vendor applications from last year's vendors, who were the year before's vendors. So everybody's sticking with us. Even the day it rained, they all stuck here.
Can we get like we have the founders banner at the, kind of by that 4-way up here? Can we get a banner like that to go?
Like
across?
over the highway where the Tyrone Founder's Day banner used to be?
Yes,
Yes, sir, I can talk to ASI and see if they'll donate one.
just because, you know, and have it, the dates and when they are.
The only problem with that is we can't hang that banner. EMC has to hang the banner. They already hang it for us twice.
Okay.
Well, they do the Christmas thing, and then they do the Founder's Day. I mean, we can do other signage and other advertising, but yeah, the banner would be kind of a tough thing, I think. Plus, it's expensive to get donated and all of that. And if you don't get it donated and you really want it, then that's another cost and all of that. Just a quick question. We started to charge the vendors for the event last year. How has that gone? Do we have the financials on that?
Well, year before we tried, and then people were just getting used to it. Last year, they paid also $15 a pop, and I believe it was about $1,000 we brought in.
Per event or total?
Yes, sir, well, no, overall.
Overall, so that's not much of an offset, but it is an offset.
Because
We
we,
charged it so that people have more accountability and are more apt to show up if they got a little bit of money in it.
Right.
When does the park rehab start?
We're still a ways out from that.
Okay, so we're after summer, you think?
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I think construction will start after summer. We actually have the final design for the park that'll go before council, not at this council meeting, but I'm thinking probably the next council meeting. So sometime in March, we'll have approval of the final design of the park, and then we'll probably just put out an RFP to get, construction started right away. So,
Will parking be available in that lot?
yes. Yeah, that's also something we're working on simultaneously. We're gonna get that, the vacant lot situated for parking. That will also allow us to, while the park is under construction, have parking
Is it
accessible to the
possible
park.
to set up this year where the stage will be in the future? Power-wise?
I mean, they'll have to run, but they did that for Founder's Day. Y'all had that one stage facing
We had to
Sonora
stay on
Road.
the opposite end and ran into a huge power problem
Okay.
And the stage, we had a stage right there at the back of the lake.
Yeah.
We had
Right.
one at the end we ended up not being able to use. We had Abby's wooden trailer
Okay.
there. And sound man ran from the middle, his power there.
Okay.
But there is no power right there at that wooden stage.
Okay, so just getting the power there, I guess.
It'd
is
just be
the
nice to use that
biggest
parking lot.
challenge.
You know, it still will use it, but
Yeah.
closer proximity.
We can discuss, you know, the fee for vendors. I mean, $15 is pretty nominal. I know I mean, only because my wife was involved in those things before, but I mean, a $50 fee was not really anything that people really thought about. But that might be a lot. You know, I'm just saying 15 is pretty nominal if we wanted to do that. But, yeah, it would help offset a little bit.
Did you have any feedback from the vendors regarding that fee?
No, they felt it was a fair fee.
So if you bumped it to $25,
We could do 20. I have put Christmas at 20. That's our event. Founder's Day, which is our biggest, is $50 per retail vendor. Cut it at 20, that would be fair. Now, some have already sent their $15. So
Okay.
you would have to decide, do you want to just go forward with 15 this year, or go ahead?
Well, those that have already paid up front, you can't ask them for another $5, but anybody who hasn't paid.
Would you like to do that?
have they paid for just one event, the first event, or have they paid for the
Some have paid
season?
for one, some have paid for all.
Oh, okay. I think you just have to leave it at 15.
I agree with that.
Yeah, you could get into
Yeah.
well, I paid 15, I paid 20.
Why'd you charge me $5 more?
If I may, John and Adam, have you guys experienced any change in business on First Fridays?
Sometimes, again, I think it's more
Weather-related.
weather-related and the turnout at the park. We get some people beforehand and then maybe a few after, but yeah.
About the same, yeah.
Well, I can go on to the next, the final three events and go through that with you as well,
Sure, go ahead.
if that's okay. So for July, August, and September, we have July Bullsboro Band, $3,065. Theme will kind of be like a backyard barbecue, kind of, you know, July theme. August 2nd is entertainment would be a magician. So instead of a band, we'd have a magician, be Magic Night, $2,015. And then September 6th, the Men of SAE, which we've had before here, hosted them at the town before, correct?
Yes, sir, and they may see Bullsboro replaced by the name of, they are the same band, one member passed.
And then that last one was $3,065. So the total July through September budget, lineup would be $8,145. The fiscal year budget for 24-25 is $11,500. That only leaves you for the final two events in May and June of '25 with $3,355. That being said, we are likely going to run a surplus this year. That'll get added to our contingencies. We've been learning how we're budgeting, and we will likely be able to shift some money around for budgeting next year, once we start getting into that, where we can probably put a little bit more to events, and we'll take away a little bit more from other line items that we just didn't spend quite as much as we thought on. So that's just something to keep in mind. Given that we are running a little bit of a surplus this year on other items, line items, I have a second agenda item just to kind of consider perhaps purchasing some promotional and marketing materials with that surplus amount. This would be, half of that would be for items that we would sell, so that could be fundraising items, and then the other half would be giveaway items. But I can get to that in the next agenda item.
All righty. Any other thoughts?
The only thing I would say is, we've been doing this 2 years. I hate to offer something, now that I think about it, and then take it away, I think people are come to expect it, and I think there'd be a lot of disappointment in the town if we didn't go through. And since it's budgeted, and we have a surplus, and we have the money for it, I think we should continue.
Okay.
Unless there's a better idea, which I don't think anybody, right? Nobody's put up.
Well, it almost looks
let's-
like
Let's
a
try this instead.
black mark on our
so.
record too, so, as a DDA.
Well, I think you still have to give it time, you
Yeah.
know. 2 years, maybe it seems like, well, we've been doing it for 2 years, but like anything else, it takes
Builds,
time to
yeah.
become sort of a annual expectation, so.
I think year one was a lot of practice, trial, we trying to figure it out. Year two, it went better. I think, it'll continue to grow. I think it'll continue to do better. I think the town kind of, not depends on it, but I think they look forward to it. I think it's a good event. I see, budget side of things too.
I think if we promote it a little bit
Yep,
better, and with
exactly.
some of the next item that you're gonna be talking about with the marketing of it, I think that's gonna be essential for us as well. So,
I would just suggest one thing, and I think we've talked about it in the past, but maybe going forward, not for this year, but subsequent years, finding an overarching sponsor where, they may not pay for the whole thing, but they can help offset that, and you have, the First Friday, the DDA First Friday series presented by, and then they have the biggest presence, marketing presence there, of course. There's a lot of businesses in town, and I know we rely on some of those businesses for Founder's Day and some of these other things, but, we can find a strategy, I think, to approach businesses and find ways to either spread that around or, figure something else out. Some businesses may be situated where they can say, yeah, I can do a little bit for Founder's Day, but I want to be the main sponsor for, the DDA series. And it at least helps offset some of that cost. Even if you get, a third or half of the band's paid for,
Could we create a level, like, gold level? silver,
absolutely.
And
We-
then,
we can,
just
yeah.
put price on it, 500 for the gold level, and Reese will be that, and
Yep.
then silver will have partner. Oh, sorry,
write that down, Pierre. Write that down.
So,
All in favor?
and we could have some signage that's always there
Yeah.
on the stage
Yeah,
itself, on the
absolutely.
canopy. And that would
Just
be-
to help out and
Yeah.
help you guys have a little bit better level of confidence in the money and everything, but, yeah.
I think that's something to work towards, and I agree with that, and I'm sure everybody else does as well.
And that would help to keep the event going.
Yeah.
Budget side.
It would, and again, I think once the building and our recognition with our thing with that, and people start to see the name out there, I think they're gonna wanna be part of this on a greater level.
And I think
So-
if we had that, the sponsors, and say when the building does get built, the week before, we put the banners up.
Yeah,
And then it'll catch their eye on the building, like, oh, we have something coming. And then it'll create some more awareness as well, like, oh yeah, it's First Friday. And then it'll just be a thing, so.
all right, so, that being the case, do we have a motion to approve the 2024 First Friday event series?
Motion to approve.
And we have a second, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, so that's done. Philip, would you continue on?
Yes, sir. So the next item that we have, okay, there's just some pictures of the vendors. So again, with that, a little bit of that surplus, staff is proposing a minimum of $1,500 of that roughly $3,500 surplus from events go towards promotional materials, about $1,000 going towards merchandising for sale, and probably about $500 going towards giveaway and promotional items. It would be a little bit of a test/pilot program for the DDA to see if merchandising is popular and/or profitable. I took a look at Vistaprint because it's just easy to acquire, rough estimates and things from them. but a $1,500 budget would get you approximately 100 T-shirts, 50 hats, 100 canvas totes, and 300 pens. Now, we don't have to go with any of those items necessarily, but it's just giving you a rough idea of what you'll get for 1,500, and we can see how we go through those for the first Friday events. We'll have some of those items for sale, some of those items for giveaway at our tent, and we can just kind of see how it goes. I did have Vistaprint here, so in addition to requesting approval of the budget amount, I did kind of want to get an idea as to what we were interested in actually obtaining. So I don't know if shirts and hats for sale are what you want to do, or if there's another category of items that you would prefer to sell, or a different category of items you would prefer to also give away. But we can kind of look through, you can see your costs, and we can see approximately how many we can get of each one of those items. I can either get a vote from you on that today, and we can go through this together, or you guys can kind of browse, use the link. I can send it to you, and we can kind of get a little bit of a consensus via, email if you guys find something that interests you, but however you want to
Personally,
proceed.
I think we would need to see more items that we have.
Yep.
And then we can all get back to them on that. Does anybody have?
I think that, like, as far as shirts go, sizing's just tough. And then how much inventory do you carry?
Right.
As far as a hat, if you do a snapback,
Yep.
everybody can wear one.
Yep.
Kids to, no one has, so.
So has anyone here ever bought promotional products on Vistaprint?
I have.
Their hats are the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
Well, we do not have to go with Vistaprint.
They come about this far down on your head,
There's other companies that we can do, and then we
Sure.
can use the local printer or embroider
Yeah,
or whatever.
absolutely, absolutely. Vistaprint was just good for getting visuals
Yeah.
on what you'd like to get, but we would actually try our best to source things locally first before.
Atlanta shirts or
Yeah,
somebody.
yeah.
Done in.
Yeah, it's just from a display perspective on what's available. Vistaprint seemed to be able to, show you that a little bit.
And will we be
better.
promoting Tyrone?
Well, the idea here is to promote the DDA.
I mean, I just don't know.
And just having the name, the Tyrone, the Downtown Development Authority of Tyrone, it's kind of goes hand in hand, which
Right.
isn't a bad thing.
Right.
I don't know if anybody will.
Well,
buy it.
And a lot of times you'll see a downtown development authority promoting its city
Right.
with a T-shirt or a hat or items, and yeah, it's kind of small print, but, it has the DDA on there,
Yeah.
but essentially, anything you guys do is promoting Tyrone.
Right.
And I've seen where people are selling, cities are selling T-shirts or whatever, and yeah, they become really popular. There was a T-shirt, a couple of years ago at, I think the Christmas event, that had, one of the local businesses had designed, and people kept seeing the people wearing that shirt, and they're like, where'd you get that shirt? Where'd you get that shirt? And so it can be a very popular thing and a very helpful thing, also to promote the town, but also, as we were talking about last time, or in the last discussion, offsetting some of your costs. A very popular methodology nowadays for, especially things like T-shirts, is, print on demand. So while you like to give that local businesses the business, there are companies out there that have good quality items that, we might have a few on hand, but if you want this item, you go to this website and you order your shirt in your size, they print it right then and ship it. So you're not having to buy bulk quantities of whatever. And you can have that in perpetuity. You can just say, this T-shirt's available. You have a link on your website, and they click the link and they buy it. That's an option. Other things like, bags, keychains, anything you see up there, yeah, you want to have quantities of those available, but generally you're giving those away.
Yeah, water bottles or whatever it might be.
Right.
Does the town have a slogan?
We had a slogan. I don't remember what it was, but it was.
We had an old slogan from at least 2007, which was "Town of Tyrone, Town of Tomorrow." But I
Yeah.
think that was mostly because Chip Young had a Disney monorail for Tomorrowland out front. But we don't really have a slogan per se right now. the public-facing name for the Downtown Development Authority, I mean, your organizational name is just Downtown Tyrone. So that's likely what would go on the promotional material if we were just going to do the logo. We could also come up with a unique design that was unique to the DDA, but it wasn't simply just a logo either. So there are a lot of options, and we would bring those to you. And we could do it, we could do a number of items.
We could have a town contest, best slogan.
We could.
Put it out there to draw people in too, and come up with a slogan for our town and give
Yeah.
them a $50 gift certificate or something for the best one.
Yeah, we could have a
We're
competition.
promoting growth, so it could be, that's, something like that people will wear.
Yeah.
It's about that time, you know? Wanna
Pardon
get-
me?
It's about that time, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. DDA could even be like, yeah, DDA wants your opinion, you know? Or
There you
wants-
go.
Right.
You know, and that kind of helps promote both.
You can start that maybe at your first Friday event.
We
We
could.
can have a table set up and have somebody there. Just to
Throw
feedback.
phrases in
Yeah,
a
just to
hat,
get a
yeah.
feedback to see.
Yeah, we'll also, just for the town center streetscape, we'll be having public engagement events, and we can piggyback that type of thing onto those. So going forward with this particular item, I will bring items, I will let you guys kind of look at, a variety of types of individual items, and you can get back to me on that. Is the DDA comfortable with making a motion on the budget amount for it?
Let me just ask one more question if I can. If we were to agree on something, at least to start, we don't need to get an array of things, but even if we had, I'll use water bottles as an example. Say we decided water bottles. So we have those. What would be the time frame from when we place the order to when we would get these? Would they be in time for the First Friday event?
I believe we would be able to get them in time for May, certainly. If we place the order in March, I think we would get them by May. I'd like to place the order in March.
Could we sell water, like sell it with our logo on it?
We could do that as
I
well.
just don't know what the profit margin would be on
Yeah,
printing
it's a
and
good
selling.
question, I'm not sure.
Because it's hot as Hades in the summer, so
Yep.
why wouldn't people,
Yep.
If you buy by the pallet, those water bottles, they're, I haven't bought them that way, but Michael in the office, he buys them for his real estate.
I mean, are they 50 cents a piece and we sell them for $1, or?
With the print and all, I think he's under $1 each, but, not by much.
Oh, okay,
You know, so you're gonna need to sell a water bottle for $2.
couple bucks, yeah. But, and then we're competing a little bit with our vendors, but
Right.
still,
Yeah.
it would be marketing and sort of
Hand
purpose,
out
make some money.
things, yeah, if you had an empty water bottle, and again, I
Yeah.
use that as an example. It's easy, you can just hand them out to everybody and
Yeah.
just a thought. So, all right, so, on the table, we're looking at, the consideration for the promotional and marketing materials. You're looking for $1, and what did you say, $1,500?
Yep.
So, but not, at this point, we'll approve or disapprove the dollar amount for it, but we're not going to approve whatever that particular item is.
That's correct.
Does that work for
Yeah,
you?
we'll determine.
All right. So our motion on the table here is, would we consider budgeting $1,500 towards promotional and marketing items for the downtown? And we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, good deal. All righty. Let's get into the big weeds here.
So, staff has been in conversation with Mr. Collins Woods and neighbors regarding the draft contract that we developed and had sent to him. We wanted Collins and we wanted the neighbors team to pull out and extract any major items of interest before contracting with an architect to move forward. Just as background, the architect's very important because they get us some of the more hard-line official estimates that we would need to add into the final contract to kind of make the numbers work out. Mr. Woods and the neighbors team have reviewed the contract and have asked staff questions regarding the potentiality of shifting from a long-term rental agreement towards a more lease-to-own agreement. Collins told me on the phone that the level of investment that they would potentially put into the building, which could be upwards of, in addition to ours, on his side, about $500,000. His investor team was uncomfortable with that level of investment without having some ownership of, or path to ownership of the building. So that's that was the major sticking point that he pulled out. Of course, we all had discussions that this was a long-term rental, and the benefit of that was that this rental is not based on market rates. It's based on purely the level of investment that DDA is putting in, us not losing money, and being able to provide something to him long-term. And I know usually investor teams are not, that might be a new concept to them. So I first of all asked him to just make sure he reiterated that to his investment team, that we're talking about very low rent for an extended period of time. But that I would also talk to you guys about a lease-to-own potentiality for the contract. One of the big sticking points that I had was with the FCDA in the reception of, or receiving of our grant, and how that would work into that, because the FCDA gave us the grant money based on the, kind of contract terms that this would be a long-term rental, that the DDA would have a long-term ownership interest in the building. Brandon had a conversation with Nikki, and I think they would be comfortable with us moving towards a lease-to-own, but likely only if we had maybe a 10 or 15-year term on that lease-to-own agreement, and there was no early purchase option for that, so that the DDA still had control of the property for at least that period of time, 10 to 15 years. So it's just part of the discussion. It allows the DDA to, move away from that property a little quicker. You would get money for that property to put towards other economic development functions. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, and ultimately, not a final decision on exactly any lease-to-own agreement, terms, but if I could get a vote that stipulates that you're comfortable with staff drafting some draft terms, and I can put that before you, and I can let Collins know that you guys are potentially okay with that. I told him really and truly what we wanted to have happen out of this meeting was for him to feel, in his investment team, to feel comfortable moving forward with an architect. That's really what I know we're all looking for, because that's what moves the project forward.
All right. Anybody got any thoughts or questions for Philip?
Yeah, I do. Do we have any idea, once the fire station gets completed, the work, architect, and the work is done on the building's functional, it's operating as a restaurant, we have any idea of a price, a value of that property?
We would have to do an
Appraisal.
appraisal, thank you, but the tax records show it at what, 800,000?
Yeah, the tax records showed at $849,000 valuation, which is, quite frankly, pretty extraordinarily high for it. The building's only valued at $250, and then the remainder's in the land, which is also fairly high, because that puts the land at, near $500,000 of value. But it is one of those things that we would have to ascertain from an actual appraiser. But we were thinking that the total valuation of this building would be anywhere between $1 and $1.5 million, based on where it currently sits and what improvements we'd be putting into it.
Okay.
Once it's improved.
Yeah. That's just a super rough ballpark.
I think the lease to own on their part, just from my experience, is a smart move for them.
Sure.
And, minimum, 10 years, yeah.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
Yeah.
All right.
Going along with what Ally said last meeting about majority control, or is that what you were saying? I feel like we may lose that majority control, and then he may kick in having to pay that tax anyways. I was suggesting that maybe we just hold a mortgage on it, And I ran some just numbers based on things. Can we talk numbers? Or do we need counsel for that, or how does that?
Talk numbers on a mortgage?
Like mortgage, like if we did a certain amount as examples, can we talk about that?
Are you talking about tax numbers or?
No,
There's
just
so
like a
many
mortgage
numbers.
number.
And I really can't speak to that. I'm not a numbers girl, so.
Well, just financially speaking, and we'll just throw out a random number. If it was 750,000 that we mortgaged for him, and we had a balloon payment at 10 years, and to make that payment at 6,000 a month, you'd amortize it for 19 years. So over that 10 years, we'll end up bringing in 720,000. At the payoff, he would still owe 476 if you did it that way. That's a great windfall for us. We'd collect money throughout the time like we would already. And then at the end, in 10 years or whenever he'd like to pay us off, there'll be a balloon payment. But if we do it at interest at 7%, which is, I think, pretty fair for a commercial deal. I mean, we're
Today's
capitalizing. I don't know if the FCDA will be okay with that, but with our $100,000 investment and the FCDA's money.
Will they, the question that I would have.
And that's what I
is,
say, we can take that to them to
is the
see.
FCDA still willing to give us the 300,000 if we then put it into a buyout, to a mortgage?
And I would have to look at the grant paperwork. I just found out about this morning.
Mhm.
I will say, you have moved from a discussion about retaining a property and holding it for investment into disposing of public property. So you've kind of changed the game a little bit. Mayor and council needs to be aware of this because they donated that for the purpose of holding for long-term investment. So in order to do this, you've got a lot of legal changes that seem minor, but when you dispose of public property, there's a process. And we have gone through a public RFP for a partner, but not to dispose of public property. So we need to look into a few things from a legal standpoint that weren't on the table before this came up.
But maybe these are just options we can throw
Right.
out to see if Collins even.
Right,
amicable to
investigate,
them.
look at it, make mayor and council aware, but there are a few steps involved here. And the grant paperwork is another thing. I know we've talked to Nikki, but I haven't looked over the paperwork to know what it says. We would probably have to rewrite that grant.
The grant paperwork, from my research, the grant paperwork doesn't actually stipulate conditions of us receiving the grant contingent upon either lease to, it's not that specific. It is for economic development functions associated with us getting the project to the end goal that we're looking to get it to, which is a redeveloped building in the downtown core, that serves, the purpose of a restaurant and is a public space. So it's more ends oriented than means oriented. We still obviously need to have some discussions with them. From a mortgage perspective, if we decided to mortgage the property, the only major consideration there is that that's a little bit more oriented towards him potentially purchasing it at any time. He could just own it. So the lease to own model allows us to put some stipulations that we have control at least for a certain period of time. And so that might be a little bit more acceptable to both mayor and council and to the FCDA if we go in that direction. But we could still structure it very similarly
Right.
to what you're talking about from a numbers perspective. We could still
Right.
structure it that way. But it would allow us to retain ownership for, at least a decade, perhaps, 15
Well, we can have
years.
an end number that we would, if we did it either way. So, at those numbers, I mean, that's 1 point something million we would collect.
Mhm.
So if you leased it to him for the same amount, and at the end, we'd know what we'd get anyways, maybe that's his buyout lease option
Right.
as far as that. And we can always put a deed restriction on that when we sell it to him, saying it always has to be a restaurant. Or it always has to, so we can control what's in our town.
And that's a potentiality as well.
Yeah.
But
he needs to know all that now, so.
Sure, and I'm not asking for approval of anything specific, saying, oh, we're definitely doing lease with these, or lease to own with these terms. Really just asking for some direction on if we're comfortable moving in that direction, staff and, legal counsel will come together and put together some options for further discussion on that line.
On a personal basis, I'm in favor of going to a lease to buy, and then to investigate, Ernie's thoughts as well. Does that work for you, Ally?
At this point, and we're just looking into how this works, that yes, of course, but we do need to investigate.
Gotta have the grant, and that's
Right.
the way
Yeah,
to get the
that's
grant.
absolutely
So we
right.
gotta-
I don't
we
want to
gotta
jeopardize
Figure
losing.
out exactly how to keep that grant and move
Like, all
forward,
of a
yeah.
sudden, we went from maintaining control of this property and having a lifelong lease.
So you would be in favor of keeping it
The way
owner?
we planned for the last year, like, instead of just starting this process all over again, like, we're trying to get them in there.
I think Collins and his investors' concern is how much upfront money they're gonna put in, and where's their return in the future? And, yes, it's a restaurant, they're gonna collect money, but they're also improving a property. I mean, they're gonna do the build-out on the inside, which we have nothing to do with.
Which is pretty typical.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Yeah.
it's nothing out of the ordinary for put their money in it. Not anything new. Approximate numbers for.
But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the game changer is the fact that if the investors don't gain ownership in that building, they more than likely might pull out from him, and then the deal won't go through. So, am I correct on that, Philip?
Well, I mean, I did ask him. Yeah, I did ask him what he thought were, in terms of major considerations. I said, on the terms of non-negotiables to him and his team. I do want us to have more detailed conversations with him. After this meeting, I am going to schedule a meeting with the finance committee here, as well as anybody on his team. As in the next 2 weeks, I'd really like to sit down so that we can get into, what are they looking for, really and truly, what are non-negotiables. I also really want them to understand, and this is something that is not typical for an investment group, they're always thinking on terms of for-profit entities. Our mission is to break even and then to serve a public goal, which is, revitalization of downtown and making citizens happy. So from a long-term rental perspective, our rents would not be anywhere close to market rate, and they'd be much more stable than market rate. And so in terms of him being able to recoup his investment, or his investors recoup his investment, it would be in a different manner. And that may not make sense to them, because from a for-profit perspective, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But they would recoup it in a different way, and we'd make sure that that was based in the contract, in terms of how they would actually visualize that, them recouping their costs long-term. And it's not necessarily in real property ownership. It's based a lot more on, the
Profit
success.
distribution.
Yeah, profit distribution, exactly, and the success of the business. So I definitely want to make sure that we're not dropping fully the conversation of long-term rental, and we're very clearly, talking about that to them. But I wanted to get a comfort feel from you guys on if we needed to shift in that direction, would we be allowed to explore that with them?
So the question you're asking us is, would we feel comfortable going into a lease to own?
Yeah, authorizing staff to research that and develop some potential terms.
I think
and
absolutely
answers.
finding out as much information as you can, because losing the grant's not an option, so.
Right.
um,
I'm curious if the RFP, first put that out, did it incorporate a lease RFP?
Our RFP talked about long-term rental. It did not talk about ownership.
And that's part of my concern when we're talking about this type of project and what we've tried to do with it and the whole purpose behind it. We're already behind. I mean, we tried to get out of Collins' way. We tried to, we went through the process that we needed to go through to bring him on board. And then we said, we want to get out of your way so that you can get this done. I think we were all under the impression that he had his financials were where they needed to be. and that they were ready to move forward with a restaurant. Because when they came in here, they were talking about, they were looking at the option of even building from the ground up, you know. We were gonna be able to provide them with a location that was I think in the restaurant industry, I'm not a restaurateur, but very reasonable cost. And that was the deal. And now here we are months later, we don't even have an architect. And now we're talking about, possibly moving the goalposts, and we're talking about going from what was a lease project to now potentially rent to own. These conversations, while we want to make them go fast, you're probably looking at a couple more months of delay, just in getting ink on paper that we have an agreement. So just, right, exactly, we already had that. We already had a plan, and we had an agreement, and so I just want to manage expectations for you guys and anybody else that's watching, and council members, that, we're delayed, and we're gonna be further delayed. I mean, we had talked about, we hadn't, but, the others involved in the project had talked about potentially having this thing open in December. We'll be lucky to have paperwork signed by middle of summer. And so there's no way that you're not gonna see anything moving over there this year, at the point we're moving, or at the pace that we're moving.
With the grant, do we have to have a lease or anything signed at all? Can we start?
Well,
I know
that-
we can do along his vision, but
I do think that I do believe that we need to have at least an MOU with an entity, with realistic expectations that is gonna go forward. At a minimum, because that's what the FCDA has
Right.
awarded us the grant for, based on already. So I think we would at least need to have that for anything future. So I don't know if we would be able to continue to use any of the grant monies if we fall out of an MOU or out of contract with neighbors. I think at that point, we'd need to freeze the grant operations. But luckily, we do have buffer for this building. We have $100,000 of our own money that we can make progress on if we need to, without touching grant money, so that we're not complicating spending the FCDA's money in, this type of dynamic. So it's not that we can't move forward in that kind of direction with our own money, but yes, that's kind of where we stand. And I do, just again, to kind of keep things moving, immediately after this meeting, I'm going to schedule a meeting with Collins and anybody from his team, decision-making team, with the finance committee and a couple others to really kind of make sure that we get ourselves on track, and get answers. So, but I just wanted to make sure we were comfortable at least exploring and identifying a lease to own as a discussion, and putting together some terms on that.
I know you gotta get going here, so,
Just an aside from a legal standpoint, before we start looking at this, when we made that request for RFPs, we had a very certain set of circumstances that they were to respond under. We have shifted that completely when this happens. And so I'm not sure you don't need to go all the way back through the RFP, because you are no longer in the same universe when you're talking about ownership of this property.
Yeah.
So just from a public finance point of view, what you've done is change the RFP entirely. Now you're looking at public property and public funds and one specific property owner that all of that is going to go into. That looks a little bit not transparent from a government point of view. I'm just trying to
Philip-
caution you in a change that big at this point.
So Philip, should you just have that conversation?
Yeah, I think so.
With Collins and say, if we're going to look at this, then we have to start over.
That's certainly gonna be part of it.
They
Yeah,
don't,
yeah, we would let him know all consequences of moving in that direction, and give him as much information as we can on what it looks like moving in the direction that we're already set. So that's going to be a part of the conversation undoubtedly. We want to make sure we're giving him all the legal information that is involved in that.
I think according to what Brandon said, we based everything off that. And they haven't invested anything.
excuse me.
Right, a little bit of time and vision. We hadn't set a lease amount or at all, so I understand where he was coming in blind on that sense. We have kind of offered that now. And if it does change, I mean, it almost seems like we'd have to open it all up again. And I think to hold them to the fire, we have to say that. Like, look, if we change this agreement, because it was all spelled out for the public, for application, it would reopen it. Because there might be a ton of people that would jump at ownership, not. So I think
we'd
that,
probably get more
I don't think
applicants.
we
than
should
we're sure.
entertain that unless they back out.
Yeah,
Of what, as far as legality wise.
I have a question. Did they have any other concerns about our proposal? Other than, I mean, there's just this one listed about the long-term.
That was the only thing that Collins was able to tell me was a major sticking point. There was really nothing else that he had brought out. Not to say that there aren't if we have detailed conversations. This is another reason why I'd like to schedule a meeting with anybody from his finance and his business team to also, for us to kind of get a little bit into the weeds on certain things. Because if there is anything else, we want to make sure that we're identifying those things. But this was really the major item that I got out of that conversation with him.
I think it's wise to get everything on the table. If they have more requests, try our best to get everything on the table and then make it. As far as this one, I don't think.
All right, so we're still looking for that.
To at least have, to authorize staff to start research on that and begin
Is there a
conversations.
motion, there's a motion on the table here, or a request for a motion on the table for staff to look into a lease-to-own agreement with Colin Woods and his team.
Legality of it, I guess.
Right.
Yeah,
Investigative.
Option, yeah.
yeah.
So we have a
Motion to-
motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Does that satisfy that for you, Philip?
Yeah, so I'll set a meeting and I'll also
Sooner than
send something
later.
out to the finance committee as well. Yes.
I do think we need to reiterate what it was.
Yes,
And this is what you signed up for, and now you're changing the game. But we
Right.
haven't.
right,
And you're asking us to, and it may require us to open it back up, so are you willing to lose?
right.
Because it may, there may be a better suited
Yeah.
person for us. And with that, I would say discounted lease, if the investors are worried about it, I mean, just those numbers, even on the mortgage, I was saying if we held the mortgage.
Yeah.
They're getting that.
Yeah.
He can turn around and put that money towards that.
Yeah, it's like Lucy said,
And you're
it's
saying
more,
about as a
it's more of a
profit-based?
profit distribution
Yes.
model instead of a real property,
And I think
asset
they may need
model.
to understand that from us,
Yes,
and then they can see it. And then that's them leaning on Collins, not leaning on us.
yeah,
Because that's what they're doing now. They're saying, okay, well, great, now we have a property, and that's why, we go into deed restrictions and all that. That we don't know what it's gonna be worth in 10 years.
right.
We don't know the economy. We don't have a crystal ball. So, but we do know that, hey, we're giving you a great deal in today's rate.
It's only gonna get better as prices go up in the future.
Right.
But to Ally's point, I guess it's not, we may have to send it out there. I mean, if you're insisting on going this direction, I think we will have to send
Yes.
it out there, so we can definitely be above board, so it's not a May question. It's like, are you going in this direction, Colin? Is this your sticking point? Well, then, this is
We're
what we
done.
are going to have to do,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so, I mean, it's.
You need to take off?
I do, if that's okay.
Thank you, Philip. Appreciate it.
Philip.
Okay. Any staff comments,
I don't have anything.
ladies? No, sir. Okay. Any board comments? No? Okay, Philip, Brandon, I want to tell you, I think your wireless mics work wonderfully.
Well, thank you.
That was good. This is the first time you've gotten to use them, correct?
We used them at the last council meeting.
Oh, I didn't notice them.
Yeah, we use those, and we have a new live stream camera that's a little bit clearer.
What, wireless mic? What?
Yeah,
Yeah, like the one Philip brought up.
Oh, that.
Yeah. These are still attached, but those have been problematic for us going forward,
Yep.
so. But anyway, that's my comment.
thank you.
Any need for executive session? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Very good. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
No, that was great. I mean, I wouldn't even think like what we started off at.
But, that's a